Elite Facts presents
10 Scary Moments in Survival Horror Games. Wolfenstein, The Old Blood, The Dead Rise. So, when Wolfenstein was rebooted back in 2014, it was a great way to bring the franchise back to its roots, with it being more about science rather than the supernatural elements that a few games before it had. Well, in 2015, an expansion was released that gave the players two new stories that respectively had the scientific elements in Story 1 and the supernatural elements in Story 2. At the start of Story 2, your character is undercover at a local German pub in an attempt to retrieve plans from Nazi researcher Helga von Schnabs, only for an earthquake to happen during the whole operation that kills a number of Nazi troops in the process. While escaping the wreckage of the pub, you see one lone Nazi standing in the middle of a hallway ready for you to take down. As you do this, he turns around only to be a zombie. This surprises the player as they are quickly swarmed by more Nazi zombies. At the end of this portion, you see one of your teammates being attacked by a Nazi zombie as all you can do is watch her die. This alone sets the tone for the rest of the game. Dino Crisis T-Rex. This scene is everything you could ever want from a game that uses dinosaurs. So Dino Crisis is essentially Resident Evil, but with dinosaurs. Although a weird concept, it works incredibly well. Going into this, every first-time player is expecting to see a T-Rex in this game, so this alone has the player on the edge of their seat. But even when it happens, the player still gets the shock of their life. The player goes to the chief's office to put in a code to unlock a safe that contains a key card. The literal second the code is put in, the Tyrannosaurus's head smashes through the glass of the room and snatches a corpse that was already in the room before you got there. At this point, the T-Rex's head comes back in the room for a chance at taking you too. Eternal Darkness, Sanity's Requiem, Sanity Effects. Eternal Darkness is a highly underrated gem on the GameCube that doesn't get the recognition that it should. The game plays fairly similar to Resident Evil, as you play a variety of characters that span over different time periods. Now, the scariest part of this game doesn't necessarily come from the story, but the game itself literally messes with the players themselves. The game incorporates a sanity meter in which your sanity depletes when damage is taken. What this does is provide visual hallucinations that single-handedly scare the player. These hallucinations include the player's TV channel being swapped over, the game faking a PC's blue screen error code, and even showing the player's save data being deleted when attempting to save. Parasite Eve, Rat Transformation. Although only an introduction for an enemy, this transformation is just downright disturbing, as it starts off by showing the rat making odd roaring-like sounds before showing the parasite taking over its DNA. This slowly and somewhat gruesomely transforms the rat into a monster. This easily gave kids nightmares. The Last of Us Basement. At this point, it's safe to say that The Last of Us has set the bar for modern-day survival horror games. It is a literal masterpiece in storytelling. There's one part of the game that almost all players talk about, and that's the basement portion of the game. This part takes place in fairly close quarters as the player progresses through a hotel's basement area to switch on the generator to bring power back to the building. Throughout this segment, the game throws a ton of enemies at the player, so the player has to be incredibly sneaky when traveling the hallways. It is nail-biting. The Evil Within, Spider-Woman Chase. You know what's horrifying? Getting chased down by an unholy abomination. So The Evil Within was a fantastic way to bring back the survival horror genre, as the game itself feels like Resident Evil 4, but for a modern generation, which makes sense since both games are Shinji Mikami's creation. Well, he hasn't lost his touch, as the enemies and level design throughout the game are incredible, including the well-designed and well-thought-out chapter design for reborn Laura's chase scene, or more commonly known as Spider Lady. Throughout the portion of the chapter, the player is literally scrambling to escape this monstrosity, as well as having to dodge a number of trip mines along the way. It should be noted that any attacks from her lead to an instant death. Silent Hill 2 Pyramid Head Reveal. Silent Hill was bound to show up on this list in some form. During the apartments part of Silent Hill 2, you'll be given a number of tasks to undertake on different floors of the apartment complex. At some point during your time inside of this building, you'll eventually run towards a barred-off area of the building, only for the player to see Pyramid Head simply staring at them through the bars. So with this in mind, this sends the player into a sense of impending doom, as they know they're going to be seeing him up close and personal soon. Well, they do, in the form of a cutscene. The cutscene shows the player character hiding in a closet while watching Pyramid Head dismember one of the mannequin monsters, before standing in front of the closet the player is hiding in, waiting for you to make a move. Luckily for the player, however, they are able to make him retreat when finding a clip of ammo in the closet and unloading it on Pyramid Head, although you know it's not the last time you'll be seeing him. Alien Isolation Hide and Seek. Based on one of the scariest horror films of the 1970s, Alien Isolation lives up to the franchise's expectations, as the entire game is scary. So, as if the working Joes weren't creepy enough, the xenomorph portions of the game are terrifying, as it requires the player to essentially play hide and seek, which would be an easy task in most games today. However, the xenomorph in-game AI is insanely accurate, making him very unpredictable, as well as smart. This is extremely terrifying when trying to save the game at one of the game's save points during these segments of the game. It usually takes a few seconds for your game save to register. However, the xenomorph can literally interrupt this by attacking, thus making you lose your progress. Resident Evil 4 Regenerator Chapter. So at this point during the game, the scenery takes a drastic change from the Spanish villages to a scientific research facility. When the player picks up a key card to access the autopsy rooms in Chapter 5.1, they will immediately be attacked by Regenerator. Its appearance alone is something to be afraid of, but during your first encounter, you'll notice that these creatures are no pushovers, as they at first seem invincible. But even when finding their weakness, you need to have good aim, because these things will stop at nothing to kill the player. Resident Evil 1 Zombie Introduction. It should come as no shock that this scene would be number 1 on this list. This scene alone defined the survival horror genre in gaming today. Just the fact that you slowly approach what looks like a survivor only to see them chowing down on one of your fallen teammates before giving you a lifeless stare easily sends chills up the spines of first-time players. This scene is so iconic that it's been remade countless times in other horror video games.
Thanks for watching another amazing video, folks. Subscribe for more from Elite Facts.